Now, let's get more on that story. Let's cross and talk to Jim Palmer, who's Executive Director of the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, the largest police union in the state, representing officers in 300 police departments, but not including Kenosha. Thank you so much for being here on the programme. How alarmed are you at some of the scenes we've been witnessing now for 3 days there in Kenosha?
Well, I and the organization I represent are very alarmed. I think, we are, these are very divisive issues, clearly, and to see, citizens exercising vigilantism on the one hand, and on the other, you have certain activists that are engaging in violent and destructive unrest. It is very troubling and disconcerting on many levels.
Let's take it in stages as we see some of the pictures from last night, because 2 people dying in those disturbances overnight. You talk of vigilantism. How worrying is that? Is it a sign that effectively police have lost control if individuals are roaming around with guns and firing?
Well, in the United States, people are permitted to openly carry weapons, right or wrong. I want to render any judgments on that. But certainly, when it comes to these protest activities and for people to show up with firearms, I think it does nothing to help the situation and to bring a sense of calm to anything. We are very disconcerted. Officers in Kenosha, for example, are spread very thin. When you have 300 to 500 people spread across the city, setting fires and engaging in a range of destructive and violent activity. And it's worth noting that most of the protests during the day have been peaceful. At night, it's a different story. But when you have officers spread so thin, it is very difficult for them to keep people safe and to be everywhere. And even with the National Guard, there were some National Guardsmen activated last night in Kenosha. It sounds as though there will be additional officers from the National Guard tonight. But they are spread thin, and I think people are taking it upon themselves to take justice into their own hands. And that is very disconcerting, because when civilians do that, they don't operate by any set of rules or guidelines. And holding them accountable is much more difficult.
Every aspect of this story is troubling. How troubled are you by what took place on Sunday? 7 shots into the back of this unarmed man.
Well, I think we recognize that the video, the traumatic bystander video, and the incident itself is had deeply impacted many people. First and foremost, Jacob Blake and his family, and our hearts go out to them. Regardless of the circumstances, this is a tragic outcome. But when it comes to the legal assessment of whether the officers were acted appropriately and were justified in their actions, the circumstances do matter. Wisconsin was the first state in the nation in 2014 to establish an independent investigative process. Anytime there's an officer-involved death or a situation, a severe critical incident like this, and that investigation is undertaken by an outside agency.
But why do you think you're right, and that investigation is taking place, and that's why there's been no rush to charges, for example, the authorities making it quite clear they have to take their time, make the right call on this. But why do you think these incidents keep happening? Because there have been plenty of contributors, plenty of campaigners making the point that in their view, black people and black men are policed differently in America to white people.
Well, I think we need to be able to have, first and foremost, I think we need leaders at the state level and at the national level to bring people together, and that's not something we are seeing currently. It is.
But you can't bring people together if that premise is true, and that's what I'm asking you to address. Is that the case? Is there a difference in outlook subconsciously in terms of when police are faced with a black person, a black man?
I don't know that there's I think that needs to be studied. I mean, clearly, there is a disparity in terms of the numbers. In Wisconsin, however, the vast majority of people that are shot by law enforcement officers each and every year are not African American or black or minorities. Having said that, the proportion of minorities that are shot by officers in this state is greater than their proportion relative to the general population. Those are things that need to be absolutely be looked at, and we need to make sure that we have transparency and accountability measures in place. not unlike our law that mandates an independent investigation by an outside agency, that lend credibility to what officers do, and when an officer is found to have done wrong, that they are held accountable. We also need to take really engage in a systemic exploration as to the problems of racial prejudice and bias and disparities in our country, and that's not something that we've been doing. In the wake of the death of George Floyd in Minnesota, there has been an overwhelming focus on policing, and I'm not, trying to sidestep that by any means. But if we can enact every single reform to how law enforcement officers function and operate, but if we haven't done anything to address the underlying disparities in our economic system, our educational system, and our healthcare system, just to provide a few examples, I would say that we've done very little to remedy these fundamental problems.
Well, Jim Palmer, you make some interesting points, and thank you for coming on the programme and talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.